we have the privilege of still being in Purim, at least a little bit, that we're finishing Torah Yud today. So we have to jump back into Purim now. And we have to try to remind ourselves a little bit of what we've been learning over here with regard to what Mordechai and Esther represent. That very briefly in this Torah, we've learned that Mordechai and Esther are the dual reflection of the energy of Moshe Rabbeinu. That Moshe Rabbeinu is Gematria Charein Af. He's buried Mul Beis Pa'ar because he's Mevatel, he's nullifying the Avodah Zarah of Pa'ar. And we learned that Avodah Zarah, in the context of Torah Yud, is really Gaiva, is arrogance. And this really, Rebbe Nachman is teaching us, is the essence of what Haman is the essence really of what Amalek is. When it comes down to it, if people want to know, well, like, what is Amalek? It's this. It's Gaiva. Amalek is Chametz. Amalek, there are millions of symbols for it throughout the whole journey of Yiddishkeit, which is just trying to keep us anchored in this consciousness. So I was posting something about Purim, and someone said, like, but that's every Yom Tov. And that's true. That's the secret. But it's all the same thing. And Sukkot is about Diras Arai, not Diras Keva. It's the same idea. So many of the ideas, of course, like we said, Pesach, Chametz, and Matzah. It's just a reinforcing of this very simple idea that we are here for Him and not for us. That we are the sparks of a much, much greater ocean. That there is ultimate meaning outside of our subjective experience. That's really what the whole Yiddishkeit is trying to teach us and to ground us in that consciousness. There are just millions of ways through different mitzvahs and through different Yamim Tovim and through different parts of the Torah, whether it's Torah Shabbat, Torah Sheba'al Peh, that are trying to reinforce this basic consciousness, which is very basic to learn about and very, very difficult to live with, right? And to live out of that heuristic, out of that worldview. Okay, so that's basically what we've been learning now about Mordechai and Esther. And this is the Nakuda that once a person has simcha and the leah that comes from anivos, that they're lightweight and they're not weighed down with their own gravity and their own heaviness. That's going to cause what's called Isgalos Yadayim V'Raglayim, right? The Ruach is going to manifest in the hands and the feet, which you learned is Keneged Nigla and Nistra of the Torah, that together is drawing on the Lamed and the Beis, on the Lev, of the first letter of the Aleph Beis and the last letter of the Aleph Beis. And then this is manifest in Mordechai and Esther. Mordechai is the Bechina of Yadayim. Esther is the Bechina of Raglayim, without getting into all the Ramazim now. Kimu v'Kiblu, right? Everything that we learn, Omer, SHIURIM. And this is what Mordechai and Esther are manifesting, and therefore they are able to counteract the personality and the attack of Haman, Amalek. And that's really, Rebbe Nachman is telling us, that's the Purim story in a nutshell, to understand the ma'amakim of that, and who Haman was, and who Mordechai and Esther are. And then we have that Rebbe Nachman told us about this, the depth of this Gemara, where Rabbi Bar Chana is telling us about the Arab merchant that's showing him the place where Korach was buried into the ground, with all the Ramazim over there, about the two openings in the ground that are smoking, right? That the Rebbe says this is Charein Af, and they do a COVID test over there with the roimach, and they stick it in the nostrils, which is incredibly deep, yeah, and it's singed, and the Rebbe tells us this is the Ichrach Ichruches Darichas Yamim, right? That if you counteract Gaiva, which causes Chochmah Shel Adam to be mistalekas, and the Chochmah is to Chayes Ba'aleh, that once you've rectified the Charein Af with the Roimach, which is Ruach Mem, right, and with the wool that's a Bechina of Mordechai, dipped in water that's a Bechina of Esther, and you put it inside the Charein Af, meaning you sweeten it, and what you're left with is Arichas Yamim, Ichrach Ichruche Chayes, that's Arich, that's Ichrach, that's the conjugation of those two words, Chayim and Arichas Yamim, because you brought back the Chochmah, and Chochmah is to Chayes Ba'aleh. Okay, that's basically what we've been learning about. Now the Rebbe in Ois Yud goes back to the very beginning of the Torah, with which he began with a pasuk, and the pasuk is Ve'ela amishpatim asher tasim l'fneihem, and it's brought in the Mechilot in the Gemara, asher tasim l'fneihem, that it's plural, Hushvu isha le'ish l'chol dinim shabatayra, which means that with regard to monetary financial laws, the Torah is saying hushvu, they're equal, right? Asher tasam l'fneihem, isha and ish, males and females are equal. Says the Rebbe, what's the depth? Ki isa b'mecholta, the Rebbe sees that it's a malady and a prescription. that the pasuk is telling us here. Ki isa b'mechal v'zeh perish ve'ela mishpatim asher tasam lefneim. Ki isa b'mechilta, it's brought down in the Medrash, and the mechilta asher tasam lefneim, that you shall place before them hushvu ish le'ish lechol dinim Shabbat Torah. What does this mean? Perish. Again, start from the end, go back to the beginning. That's been the theme throughout this Torah, throughout many of the lessons that we pointed out by Rebbe. Olam hafach reisi. You start from the end and go to the beginning. L'chol dinim Shabbat Torah. Whenever there are dinim, whenever there are judgments on a yid, on Klal Yisrael, l'chol dinim Shabbat Torah shetzarach lahamtikam, that a person needs to sweeten, says the Rebbe. Dinim over here mean harsh judgments, gevura, when there's a decree on Klal Yisrael. So what's the answer? So l'chol dinim Shabbat Torah, what do you do when there's din? And the answer is hushvu ish leish, which means tzarach lahashvos hanu liyachid kutchabrichu ushchinte. Shebechinas ish v'isha. Hushvu isha le'ish. You bring together the isha and the ish, which in this context, which I hinted to on Purim, bechinas Mordechai ve'Esther, are reflected in the energies of Mordechai, who is the bechina of Makif, right? That's the bechina of the Yadayim, and Esther, which is the Shechina, which is the Raglayim, like we had learned. Liyachid kutchabrichu shchinas bechinas ish v'isha bechinas Mordechai ve'Esther. That's how you fix up l'chol dinim Shabbat Torah. The answer is hushvu isha le'ish, because when you have a skalas yadayim, a skalas raglayim, the dancing and the clapping, the rikudim and the amchas kaf and the simcha from the anivos, that's mevatel the avodah zara of gaiva. And if there's no avodah zara ba'olam, then there's no charein af ba'olam. Who's that pirish? And this is pshat in the actual pasuk that the mechilta is coming on. Ve'ela mishpatim asher tasim lefneim, says the Rebbe. What's ve'ela? Kol makom shenamar ve'ela, Chazal tell us in the Medrash Bereshis Rabbah Parshas Noach. Ve'ela is moisif al rishonim. Ve'ela, right? A vav is always vav achibur. Ve'ela is coming to add on to what was already said, as Rashi over there tells us, right? Just like those were by Sinai, these were by Sinai. Ve'ela. There's a deep connection between the dinim and the Ten Commandments and everything else that was told in Parshas Yisro. Ve'ela is moisif al rishonim. Says the Rebbe, what's moisif? So the Rebbe says it's mamash gaiva. V'chinas toisvus for riboy. That's gaiva. Ve'ela, right? Eila is moisif al rishonim. What is moisif? Lo'osif. A person is bigger than they really are. They're adding on to themselves. So bechina of gaiva. Toisvus v'riboy. Bechina is gaiva avodah zara. Kamay shekasa, because the pasuk of the Varim says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu loved us because we were humble. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu did not choose us. Lo mirubchem chashak Hashem b'chem. Right? Shapirish gaiva. Meaning, Chazal say ma'atem atzmechem, right? You make yourself small. So mirubchem is right. Loy mirubchem, meaning atem ma'at is the flip side of rubchem. If ma'at means anivos, so then mirubchem means gaiva. Mirubchem is the bechina of moisif, right? Mirubchem. That's what it means. That a person is in a state of gaiva. They are pumping themselves up, right? And they're blowing themselves out of proportion. Coming up to Pesach now, so the bechina of matzah, like we learned in Torah Ches, in Torah Hey, rather. Sorry. Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's why the matzah became the chametz, because the hay turned into a ches. Okay, right. Back to Torah Hey, book of Alt. The ketiv that is chametz. Right. That's okay. Anyway, ve'ela. Kol makom shena ve'ela moisav al rishonim b'chinas toisus riu b'chinas gaiva v'dazar k'man shekasav lo mirubchem chashak Hashem shepirushay gaiva v'zeh b'chinas moisif al rishonim. This is not just any old kind of moisif, which is gaiva. It's a moisif that's ala rishonim. It's coming from the rishonim. What's a rishonim? Kameshikasav reishis goyim amalek. It's talking about Haman and Amalek. Moisif ala rishonim. This is a gaiva in this pasuk that's coming from Haman and Amalek, who are called reishis. Ve'ela v'tikuna. So how do you fix the ve'ela? So already Chazal are telling us, based on this pasuk, l'chol dinim Shabbat Torah, which is caused by the ve'ela, which is gaiva, which causes charinaf. The answer is hushvi shalish. Got to bring together yichud kutchabrichu shchinte, the male and the female, Mordechai and Esther. But the pasuk in and of itself carries on and tells us the ve'ela. What's the tikkun? Hamishpatim. The answer is ruach. Bechinas ruach. Bechinas. The pasuk says the ruach mishpat. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu will be a spirit of justice for all those who are repelling attacks at the gates. Different mafarshim on what that means. But you see that there's a ruach mishpat. A ruach mishpat. You see the pasuk is telling us that there is a spirit of mishpat. And so in this context, the Rebbe is saying the word mishpatim is a reference to ruach, that the ruach in the leiv is exactly that which is causing for the tikkun of the gaiva in the raglayim, alt ve'ini regel gaiva, and doidi shalach yadim and achar, the hiskalus of the yadayim. And the Rebbe is linking mishpat to ruach through this pasi in Yeshayahu that makes reference to the ruach mishpat. So mishpat is connected to ruach. And once a person has the mishpatim, that's a response to the ve'ela, which is moisif gaiva ala rishonim haman amalek. So then asher tasim lefneihem. And then the Maimer Chazal kicks in. Hainu ushvu isha leish lechal dinim shebatayra. And abechinas hamtakas hadinim. When you have the mishpat, which is the ruach, that is what's causing the hushvu isha leish. That's what's causing the haskalas yadayim, Mordechai, Kutchabrichu, and the raglayim, Esther, Shchinta. And together, that's hushvu isha leish. That's bringing them all together. The aye and the malay, the bechina of ratza, the bechina of shoiv. And this causes a sweetening of the din. Because like we learned, which is really the Maimer Chazal that this whole entire Torah is sort of hinging on, that all the while that there's Charen Af in the world, there's Avodah Alilim in the world, Avodah Zarah in the world, Charen Af v'dinim ba'olam v'ayidei haruach hanal. If you have good ruach of mishpat. And by the way, it's very meduyak that it's mishpat, because go back to Torah Beis, right, where we learned about the mishpat being that element that's balancing the left and the right, that's balancing the too much to one side, too much to the other side, the idea and the bechira, which later on in Torah Vav become the support for both a ratzai, which is the bechira, you can do it, and yediyah of shaif, of knowing HaKadosh Baruch Hu is with you, right? So mishpat plays a very important role there, and there is here, because the whole Likutei Moharan, as we've been learning, is one long narrative. It's one long gilui, one long revelation. All right, this is causing idea. And that's getting rid of all the charen af that is in the world. So now Rebbe Nachman does a little bit of a tiny summary. And then from the word v'hine, he's going to point out that which I pointed out at the very beginning, that this whole Torah is upside down, right? Which began with Rebbe Nachman's aliyah of the tefillah from har to sada to bayis, which, like we've said now multiple times, is really a physical yerida, because it goes from a higher place to a lower place. Rebbe Nachman refers to it from the standpoint of aliyah. We learned about the beis and the lamed being swapped around. We learned about the yadayim being nikla and the reglayim being nister, the hands are higher and the feet are lower. And this is a theme that runs its way throughout the whole entire lesson. Rebbe Nachman is going to be ma'ara that nakuda at the end. V'nei klal advarim elu. Bottom line, if you want a summary, shal yedei tzaddik shubechinas haruach is aver al acher kfiras, connecting to tzaddikim, filling one's heart with the spirit of the tzaddik, is this aver al acher, is causing the al acher, is causing the aspect of gaiva, kfiras, other gods, like I just laid in the last expression, idea ruach boim rikudim amchas kafel. When that ruach comes into one's heart, and a person is able to feel that ruach, like that strange fireman on the chat. I have no idea. I look a little bit like him. I have no idea who that was. But somebody hacked our chat. So the ruach in the heart of the person, which is niskala in the yadayim and the raglayim, causes rikudim amchas kaf ki al yedei tzaddik shebechinas haruach nis'ala haraglin. Because through the ruach of the tzaddik, which causes a person to feel anivos by coming into contact with greatness, then a person feels humbled by that, and a person recognizes, okay, I'm just a little cog, it's a huge machine. So then a person feels that humility, shebechinas haruach nis'alu haraglin, their feet are lifted up, v'nisgala aras yadayim, and their hands are revealed, that illumination of the hands, then isra emuna, and emuna is increased in the world, kamavur l'mal, like we had learned earlier. And therefore, says the Rebbe, very very pashut, it's just an open pasuk in the Torah that really very few people could understand before the Rebbe comes along. That's why it says by Yosef at tzaddik, shu bechinas ha-tzaddik, that Yosef is literally the tzaddik. Ubiladecha, Pari tells him, Lo yarim ishas yadav esraglei. Without you, nobody's going to lift a hand or a foot in this whole thing. Because the Rebbe says it's pshat. He's not giving a metaphor. He's telling him literally, you are the tzaddik. Without you, there's no eskalas yadayim v'raglayim. There's no Bechina Mordechai Esther, there's no Nigla Nister, there's no Kutshbichushchinte. It all hinges on you. Ubila Decha. La Yarim Ishas Yadav Es Raglai. No person will lift their hand or their feet. Kibalada Bechinas Yosef, Shu Bechinas Atzadik. Because without Yosef, which is the aspect of a scarvis to Tzadikim Amitiyim, a person's really stuck in life. Oh my goodness, are they stuck? Like we learned. Unbelievable. So now it says, bottom line is that we can understand the Nigla is revealing itself through the Yadayim, which are revealed, and the Nister is Mayerich B'Seiser, is revealing itself in the Raglayim, which are hidden, which are themselves B'chinas Mordechai Esther. Now here Rebbe Nachman says it, V'avshen Nister hu l'ma'ala min Nigla. Even though Nister is always coming from a higher place than Nigla, al kol zeh, im kol zeh, his galus ha-Nigla hu b'makam gavaya. Because like we learned, that which is lower down in the spiritual world is only able to reach higher up physically, because it's not powerful enough to be able to shine all the way down. So it's rooted lower, but it ends up reaching higher. Understand? Because Elam Hafach easy. But that which is rooted higher in the spiritual realm, which is Nister, is Daika, the R that's able to shine down to the lowest place. And that's why it's about the Hisgalus, not about where things are rooted. So the Avsha Nister hu l'ma'ala min Nigla, even though Nister is higher up than Nigla, in Kol Zeh Hisgalus ha-Nigla b'makom gavaya. Nigla reveals itself in the higher place, which is very, very deep. Very, very deep. Nigla reveals itself, it looks very good. Nigla shows up when, in the higher place, like in a place where people can appreciate it and recognize it, and it looks better and it's higher. It's not. Nister is in the dumps. Nister shows up by people who are brokenhearted. People who are. The Gemara says you only teach the sefer to a person who's doyeg, to a person who has a heart that's doyeg. And the Mittler Rebbe, one of the Lubavitcher Tzadikim, explains. This is what it means. People are brokenhearted. I think the Balatanya. There's a shmur in the Balatanya. He said, the Hasidim came from hell. He said that a Chassid is a person who is in Gehenna, and he comes back to this world, and chotfim elokut. They're trying to just breathe in as much elokus as they can. All of us are neshama. I could say, I don't want to say on you. Me for sure was in hell, will probably be in hell. My neshama is mamish. Our neshamas come from a place of very, very deep, deep sadness, deep, deep anxiety and brokenness. Our whole dar does. That's why today everybody's running after Hasidus, because everybody needs it. But back then, it wasn't. The Nigla souls, it looks very good. Nister is in the dumps. Daika, because it's rooted in the highest place, and you could even say Hasidus, Lubavitcher Rebbe, has a whole thing. Hasidus is Razin de Razin, the high beyond Sod. It's the Keser de Keser. That's why it's able to reach down into the deepest dumps.
You have to Esav and Yaakov. I don't want to go back Esav to Nigla, but that he was born first. That he was
exactly
second.
Exactly right. Beautiful. Excellent sushto. Yes, excellent. Im kol zeh ha-niglu b'makom gavay d'hanei yadayim v'ha-nister b'raglin shu l'mata mi-yadayim. Nister reveals itself in the lower places in life, and the people who are a little bit lower, who need that higher art to be able to hold them up. V'ha'inyan amayk, says Rebbe Nachman, that's very deep. But he says we already find this Indian in the Zohar Kadosh. Tanaim b'shaykayin v'amiran b'yadayim. The Tanaim are in the feet, and the Amirayim are in the hands. Everybody knows that an Amira can't argue on a Tana that the Tanaim are higher. But it shows up lower. It's already brought. It says in a Pirish, I don't know which was printed at the end of the Tikkun Ezra, Shamavur in Itzeh, over there this is all explained. But it's basically as I said. Right? That which is lower in Shemayim, higher here, higher in Shemayim, able to reach down lower here, and we're going to learn about that in Torah Lamed, Be'ezer Hashem, which is actually a Pesach lesson, which we'll get to when we get to it. Then Rebbe Nachman says, because this teaching was not, I don't believe, was not Lashon Rabbeinu, right? And over here, Rebbe Nachman says, I also found a little scrap of paper where Rebbe Nachman had scribbled down shorthand his notes about this lesson. Now let's see, maybe there's something, Rav Chadamel says something new. that we can find coming out from this this note. And the Rebbe wrote like this: Geios mudasles b'chol haaretz she'imida meguna. Gaiva, everybody knows, mudasles b'chol haaretz, that it's a mida maguna, v'tzarich levrach mimena. A person has to run away from it as much as you can. But there are people that are running after cover. This is like we said in Torah Vav, that they're looking for this inyan of to be a manig. They know how to do pidyonos. The tzaddikim used to do this thing with pidyon. People used to bring money to it. Rebbe Nachman reveals there's a whole formula that the tzaddikim knew how to do with the shalish yadais, yad Geulah, yad chazak, yad ramah. They would put their hands on it, even though they're still mekubalim. I think Reb Gamliel Rubinovich on Chanukah, so he does pidyon and he gives everybody coins from his pidyon. There are pidyon and in Uman Erev Rosh Hashanah, it's one of the big avodas of the day is to find a tzaddik, and there are certain people who are held to be tzaddikim. Obviously today everybody with their with their manig. But you go and give pidyon. You give some money, and they'll do a pidyon on this money, which is a very deep thing, and that has to do with yadayim. So he says. So he uses. I think it's very miduyak. Sheyesh le'el yadam. Right, lasses pidyonos. Right, that's the inyan of yadayim, the gaiva. Ulis spalol tfilas, which ain't amida el tfila. That's the raglayim. Right, so yadayim and raglayim that they have to do pidyon, yadayim, and to daven, which is Raglaim, Va'aleim Nemar, and about them it says, again, this remez, Hashev Eishes Ha'ish, please return Hashev Eishes Ha'ish Ve'espal Ba'adach V'chiyeh. So here Rebbe Nachman does bring the three final words of that pasuk, which are a direct reference to tefillah, and he says this is what it means: return the prayer to that person, because who's the ish, right? Like Jeremy was saying, the ish Moshe Anamai, ish, right, is Anivas, which is the tzaddik, which is kinavihu, because nifs vasayim the yispal ba'adcha v'chiyeh, and he will daven for you, because the tzaddik knows how to daven, and we need tzaddikim in our lives. It's known that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is desperate and desiring the prayers of the tzaddikim, and we should go to tzaddikim to daven for us. All right, aleihem, meaning on that person. These people do not go to tzaddikim that they should daven for them. They don't believe in tzaddikim. They can do it on their own. We don't need an intermediary. We're okay. And there's an inyan of gaiva there, or at least, relatively speaking, not a bittul, right? Because if you don't want to say that's gaiva, because maybe it's not gaiva, maybe it's a million things, right? Maybe this is their Messiah, this is their hashkafa, fine, right? But at least relative to a person who does go to tzaddikim, say what you want, but that person is batal. Now that person's mamatal himself. Relatively speaking, it's gaiva klape, the anivas and bittul of a person who does go to a tzaddik, right? Is able to be mavatal himself. Now again, like I'm pointing out, you can argue ashkafically, but one thing you must agree, there's more bittul in that than this, right? And that I think is just objectively true. She is not only that, but they prevent other people from going. To prevent people from praying for them. They say, no, we're righteous, we can daven, and not only that, but they'll say there's no tzaddik in the world, there's even more than them. That's why they're called Avi Melech. Avi, Lashon Ratzon, to desire. Like by Bilam. Right, Hashem didn't want to allow you to go. Ava can mean to desire. And over here we have this Nikuda of Avi Melech. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is telling Avi Melech, this person, Hashev Eishes Ha'ish. And we learned that Eishes is Rosh Hashanah, Adni Sefasai Tiftach. Return prayer that you think you have by yourself, Avi Melech. Right, Avi, that's like not a name; it's like a descriptive term, right? You Avi Melech, you person who wants to rule, and return it to the Ish, right? Hashev Eishes says Hashev. Why is the tzaddik able to daven? Because Hashev is Harasad Bayis. Because the tzaddik knows the shleimus of tefillah, is able to bring kibesi based tefillah down from a har to a sada to a bayis, and that brings about the ultimate Geulah of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Gadol Hashem, Emasai Gadol Hashem, Kishem Uhul Al Ma'od. When does that happen? When the har is brought down to sada and brought down to ir likenu, where it becomes a bias. Ad kantar yod hadr chalon. Yeah.
It's really fascinating, this particular point. So as a Chabad person, I understand and appreciate obviously the idea of tzaddik davening for you, but the guy who's got the biggest podcast in B'tachon today, he says the complete opposite, and he bangs on about it the whole time. It drives me crazy because he says that he makes the equivalent of saying that if a son asks his father but doesn't want to speak to his father, so he gets his friend to speak to his father.
It's mamish not this.
And
it's mamish not this.
I listen to Shemay Shemayim.
Send him an email.
And he says it the whole time, and he says that
Send him an email.
as if there's something's wrong with you if you think that you literally you go to your father, but your father wants to hear from the child directly. He doesn't want to hear from. You don't think you can speak to your father. You got to go to your friend. They go speak to your father.
Tell him it's a Gemara Baba Basra. If he wants to know, take a look at Baba Basra Kuf Tezayin Amud Aleph. It's a Gemara. I don't know.
20,000 people every day listening to
Okay, send him an email. Send him an email. And it could be also, by the way, that in a way he's also right, because there has to be the balance. Remember what we pointed out the diak. Meaning he's already been meaning he might be referring to the extreme of this, which is like, oh, I don't need to daven. I won't daven at all. Now HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants you to daven. And the answer always in Breslov, we say both. Both. You can say both.
He's actively against it.
Okay,
even
anyway.
Even before everything.
I'm sure he doesn't know. Send him an email, send him the SHIURIM, send him that Gemara, and then he'll know. Okay, we begin Torah Yud Aleph. Now we're really into it, because until 10 is still the first set. Now we're into open waters now. Torah Yud Aleph. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I am Hashem, and Hashem is my name. I will not give of my glory to others, and my praise to psilim, to idols, those that are puzzle. Says the Heilige Rebbe. Okay, hold on tight, because this is a bit of a cryptic one. Okay. Says the Rebbe, there's an Indian called Yichud Ilah, the elevated unity, and Yichud Tata. Now, Yichud Ilah and Yichud Tata, let's read one more sentence. Hainu, Shema Yisrael, Baruch Shem Kavod Malchusa La'olam Ba'ed. A person wants to know about this Be'iyun, should take a look at Tanya, Shar Yichud Ve'emunah. Where in Tanya, Shar Yichud Ve'emunah, the Rebbe works through what exactly is this Yichud Ilah, that Shema Yisrael Hashem Likutei Moharan, and what is the Yichud Tata that we whisper of Baruch Shem. These are two different levels of Yichud. Very, very basically, just gonna in a tiny nutshell, Yichud Ilah means Ein Oid Milvado Kipshutei Mamish. It's the realization that there is nothing else but godliness. And when a person says Shema Yisrael, they should be trying to bring themselves into that consciousness. Not that here's a world and God is in the world. That's Yichud Tata. There is nothing. This is godliness. Ani Hashem lo shinisi, atu acha lo nivra olam, atu mishen nivra olam. It's just an illusion, but it's all you. That's Yichud Ilah. That's Shema Yisrael Hashem Likutei Moharan. Baruch Shem, like I just mentioned, which we whisper, is the realization that there is a world, and in the world you can find Nitzotzis Kedusha, and there's Chiyas, and there's an interplay of energies, and we're trying to be Megala the Shechina, and. These are two different layers of reality. You can even call it Mitzidai and Mitzidenu. That's the Nefesh HaChaim's terminology for it, which I think is very helpful and useful. Right? Shema Yisrael is Mitzidai. Where from HaKadosh Baruch Hu's perspective, there's nothing. It's just Einoi Movadai. Baruch Shem is from our perspective. Yeah.
Just with reference to what Mendy said, if we're saying Shema Yisrael is Ein Od Milvadoi, when we're saying that it's Shema Yisrael, they're saying to their father Yisrael. So even when you're talking about there's nothing else but HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you still go via Sadek. You say Shema Yisrael.
Interesting. Beautiful.
Yaakov Yisrael.
Gewaldig. Even the Yichud Ilah, there's an Indian of a tzaddik, but in that place, maybe the tzaddik's bringing us to that realization that there's the Yichud Ilah of Shema Yisrael and Baruch Shem. And the Rebbe says, okay, so we learn about that. That sounds pretty mystical and pretty wild and out there. Says the Rebbe, so maybe like a big tzaddik has to have these kavanas. Says the Rebbe, no. Good morning. There's no layman in Yiddishkeit. Every Jew is a mystic. Every Jew is a tzaddik. Every Jew is a rav. Every Jew is everything. There's no. Every yid needs to bring this about. Every yid needs to be megala, the Yichud Ilah and the Yichud Tata al Yadai. Al Yadei Zeh Yachal Lav Litfunas Hatar La'amka. And then a person will be able to access the deepest depths of Torah, the Ma'ar Shabbat, that's Machzir B'Lamutav, the light in Torah, the La'amka, the Nister of Torah that's in the depth, right, that's hidden deep in the depth. Kimishu b'madrega b'chusa, because if a person is on a low level, who adayin rachik mitfunas haTorah, very, very distant. from the interiority of Torah. So how can they get to the deeper levels of Torah? How can they really bring Torah into the kishkas, like David HaMelech says in Tehillim, "V'sayrascha b'saych me'ai." What a pasuk! David says, "Your Torah is in my gut, is in my tummy," meaning in the kishkas, like we say in the vernacular, like in the kishkas. How does a person get to the kishkas of Torah and bring those kishkas into his kishkas and make a yichud kishkas with kishkas? How do you do that? Panim b'panim, kishka b'kishka. He says, so he says a person's very far from Tunas Torah. How do you do it? Rak al yidei emtzas hadibur, through speech, through being meir, their dibur, bringing the Torah into their words. Yachal lav l'tfunas hatar la'amka. Then a person can come to the depth of Torah. Hainu al yidei shu medaber ba'Torah b'diburim. Then when you learn Torah, you do it with your words. You speak out the Torah. Kamashikasa, as the pasuk says in Mishlei, and the Gemara comments in Erevin, ki chaim heim l'moitzeim. It is life for those who have found it. And the Gemara darshans moitzeim, which means find, from moitzeim b'peh. Moitzeim, those that are speaking out the divrei Torah. Then meir loy hadibur b'chol ha'mekayimos, the diburim that they're speaking will illuminate their life. And Reb Tzaddik says in Six Tzaddik, if you want to know what a person's tchunas hanefesh is, find out what they speak about. How do they talk? And it's such a hugely mitzvah on all of Klal Yisrael that we've adopted it into our societal culture that we're always saying Baruch Hashem, Emir Hashem. It's like it's not even mindful. Which sometimes frustrates me because I don't know how much more beautiful it would be if we actually meant Emir Hashem. We say does Emir Hashem, because it became a way of talking. But it's still very powerful because it reflects the fact that ba'aymek, we're kashur, because that's what we talk about and that's how we talk. We always are mentioning HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shem Hashem is shagar b'fiv. But the Rebbe says if you do that, then meir loy adibur b'chol ha'mekayimos shetzarich lasos tshuva. Then it will be illuminated for a person what areas they need to work on, how they need to rectify and to come to tshuva. Kamashikasa Rabbi Seinu Zochron Levrach, as the Gemara says in the Gemara Brachas, psach picha via iru dvarecha. Open your mouth via iru dvarecha, and your words will illuminate your life. Will illuminate your life. It's mamish. You could really, really determine what a person is. Two Yidden get together. On what level are they? Are they talking divrei Torah? Are they immediately talking about Hashem? Are they immediately talking about Yiddishkeit and Geulah and Galus? Like, what is the level of their conversation? And this is how it was. Tzaddikim got together immediately. Torah. And the Rebbe is suggesting that you don't have to go through different madrigas to get there. Says the Rebbe, just like Bechina Pesach, be medalik, like just sort of start doing that, and then it'll work its way backwards. If you start to speak Divrei Torah, you make Torah your life, your passion. People are doing the Daf Yomi, this Rebbe Eli Stefansky, people are doing the Daf with, was the other one? Rebbe Shirley Bernstein. Kevald. All of a sudden you have people talking about the Daf, and it becomes their hakarai, and they're sharing these raid bites and this, and things, and statuses. It's the most kevaldic thing. Because all of a sudden Torah is in their mouths and it's their conversation. If it's your conversation, the whole Adam is wrapped up into the Dibur, because that's what it is in Adam. All the other parts of you an animal has. Dibur not. Right? Meaning Dibur is a consciousness of the human. If your Dibur is illuminated, your whole life is illuminated. And if a person makes a conscious effort to talk Divrei Torah, their whole life becomes Torah-dik. That's what Rebbe Nachman is saying.
How have I never heard that before?
Torah Aleph, I don't know. The Rebbe's revealing real practical eitzes. He says just talk Torah. Then meir loy, like we said, psach picha v'ir dvarecha, and then b'chol pam upam, every time. What every time? What's he talking about? Al yidei kol tshuva. What every tshuva? Now Torah vav, right? Meaning tshuva al tshuva, like we learned. Am chol pam upam tshuva al tshuva. You see, it's one narrative. It just flows from Torah vav. Who hoilich mimadrega l'madrega ad sheyotzim mimadrega pchusa u'bala tfunas hatar la'amka. And then through the dibur of Torah, a person can come to tfunas hatar la'amka, to an incredibly lofty and incredibly deep level, and the whole zich, the whole humanity, your whole personhood, which is wrapped up into the dibur, which is a bechina of malchus peh, like we learned, Torah shabal peh karin Allah. Right? Remember we learned that malchus, you have the spheres chart in front of you, malchus is peh. Malchus associated with the Dibur. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world with Dibur. The world is HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Malchus, right? Is associated with speech. Davar echad ladar is a manig, is a melech, is a dabor, is Dibur. And that's what's called the ani of the person. The ani, meaning that which manifests in this world, is malchus, is your malchus. Right? That's the madrega that's here. Ani. And so the whole ani is in the dibur. Malchus is ani. It's all there. It's all there in the dibur. And that's bringing a person to the yichud of kuchabrichu ushchinte and revealing the yichud ilah and the yichud tata. And this is, we'll just go a tiny bit further. This is Shalu Yochani Mamre, who were two Egyptian sorcerers. And the Gemara Menachas Pehei tells us that they were taunting Moshe Rabbeinu when he came with the signs, right, with the snake, and the stick turned into a snake, and the snake is eating up the snakes. And they asked him, listen, Teven atamachnos le'Ephraim? Ephraim, which is a place of lots and lots and lots and lots of straw. So they're saying Teven atama. Oh, amazing! You showed up in Ephraim, a place with tons of straw. With straw? Like, I mean, they were taunting him. Like, Egypt is the place of sorcery. Well, who do you think you're impressing exactly? You came here with sorcery? This is the place of sorcery. That's what they asked him. So Moshe Rabbeinu answered them, Geulah, which is so deep. Amri Enshi, he answered them. He said, "Don't you know what people say? The lamasa yarka shukal. That to a vegetable fair, you bring vegetables." They were saying that this is already a place of sorcery, which we don't need more sorcery. And Moshe Rabbeinu said the only reason there's sorcery is because people buy sorcery. This is a sorcery store. This is not a sorcery storehouse. This is a store. People buy. So that's I showed up with merchandise. It's the right merchandise. People will buy this because people are into sorcery here. And so therefore I came with sorcery because that's what people buy. And that was the back and forth. But says Rebbe Nachman, listen to how deep this is. Teven zebachinas tevuna. Teven, which they were saying straw, is tevuna satar kamashikasa tevuna tinsrecha. It's a bechin of tevuna. Sheim evinu, they understood Shem Moshe Rabbeinu lahachnes tevuna satar b'Yisrael. Moshe Rabbeinu wanted very much to be machnis, to bring into Klal Yisrael tvuna satar la'amka, the deepest depth of Torah. Valkein shalu. So these Egyptian sorcerers were taunting, but they were saying something much deeper. And they were saying, we know ki bizman she'in Yisrael oisem mitzvah shamakim him mishulim la'afar. When Klal Yisrael are not doing what we're supposed to do, Chazal tell us we can either be like the stars of the sky or the firmament, or we can be like the dust of the ground. And Chazal tell us, right, im zoichem im lav, right? So im lav zoicha, we're mishulim la'afar. So ve'eich yuchalav v'yim lamadriga gvaya l'tfuna satira. How are you going to bring these people on a low level, which is the bechina of achar? Teven atamachnes le'Ephraim. Ephraim is afar, right? Efer, afar, right? So you're bringing tfuna satira to Ephraim, to the bechina of Klal Yisrael when they're in the level of afar. What did he answer them? So v'zeh teven loshen tfuna satira atamachnes le'Ephraim. So bechina is afar and a madriga pchusa. You're trying to bring the deepest depth of Torah to the lowest people? Hey Shalem. So you answer them, well, sure. Amrei Inshi. They're going to be able to get to it with Amrei Inshi, with their words. Amrei Inshi in the Gemara usually means that, it's a common saying. Says the Rebbe, no, that's what Moshe was telling them. Amrei Inshi. When they upgrade their conversations, they make it a point to speak about Hashem, to speak about Emunah, to speak about Yiddishkeit, but in a deep way, to speak about Torah. You become a Torah-dik mensch. It will shine to all the places where tshuva is required. And that's what it means. So how is yarka tshuva? Yarek is a vegetable. What's that? Yarka is tshuva? Says the Rebbe, well, vegetables are tshuva for hamburgers, that's true. Or burgers, like they call them here. But how is yarka tshuva? Yarka b'chinas tshuva. Says the Rebbe, this yarek is an aspect of tshuva, because Amr b'medrash, because it says in the medrash, vayarak es chanichav, that Avram Avinu prepared his people to go out to war, in the war of the 4 and the 5 kings to rescue Lot. He went vayarak es chanichav, he prepared his youth for war. And says the Medrash, how did he prepare them? Ayrikan b'parshas Shoftim. He prepared them with what's written in Parshas Shoftim. What's written in Parshas Shoftim? Mia ish hayar v'rach levav, right? And the whole speech that the Meshuach Muhammad would give before they went out to war, warning them that if there's anybody who needs to do tshuva, do not come, right? Do not go out to war, or do tshuva before. And if anybody is yari from the aveira shebiyada. So So says the Rebbe, in this context of a Yarek as Chanichav, it's a reference to Tshuva, because that was the speech he was giving them, to do Tshuva. Saying Yarek is Yarek. So the Rebbe sees from here that Yarek is Tshuva. He was warned to do Tshuva. Because in Parsha Shoftim, Nemer al Tshuva. This was the speech of the prepared soldiers for war. Hayar me'avera shebiyadai. V'zeu amri inchi, and this is what it says, Lemasa yarka. Hainu al yedei ha'amiras. Amri inchi, when people are talking with amiras, lashon racha, is the sweet, beautiful words of Torah Kedosha. The Torah Kedosha, that's a bechina of pleasantness. All right, so Amri is always lashon rach, is soft. So Amri inchi, when people are talking divrei Torah, then lemasa yarka. Hainu ad amiras v'adibur shel isha Yisraeli lemasa yarka lemekayim shetzarich lasas tshuva. Yarka tshuva lemasa, place. It will shine. Those diburim will shine to all the places that a person needs to do tshuva. Yar lahadibar sheyuchol lasas tshuva v'zeu yarka shukal. And not only will it bring them to tshuva, it will bring them to what's called in the Svarim Makdashim tshuvas hamishkal. Yarka shukal, says the Rebbe, it's called tshuvas hamishkal. What's tshuvas hamishkal? The Rambam tells us to do tshuva is one thing, but to be in the same place with the same woman in the same circumstance and to hold back, that's called tshuvas hamishkal. That's called an equal tshuva because it completely counteracted the initial act. It was a Yarka Shukal. Nobody else in Jewish history saw this Gemara and saw the words Yarka Shukal and said, Tshuvas HaMishkal. Nobody. Bechinas Tshuvas HaMishkal. How do you see, you bring a vegetable and that's Tshuvas HaMishkal. Sha'adibur Ya'ilai, because the Diburim, the Amri Inchi, is shining for a person that yes, you can bring Teven Atamachnis Le'Afraim. You can bring Tfunas HaTorah into the Bechina of Afar. Sheyucholas is Tshuvas HaMishkal Mamish, if they're speaking about it. And this again goes back to the previous Torah of Nister that shows up in the Raglayim. The answer is yes, you can bring Nister to the Raglayim, but it has to become part of the vernacular. It has to become the way that people are talking. People have to be familiar with the spiritual realm. They have to be comfortable conversing about it. It cannot just be for the ivory tower people. It has to be, and this is what the Baal Shem Tov wanted, the Bechina Bayis, bring God down to where people are at, that this becomes just the way that they live. And then yes, Teven Atamachnas Le'Efraim. The lowest people, like my humble self, can mamish be filled with the Teven, with deepest Giluyim of Torah, that maybe even Tzaddikim are not Zeicha to. Mamish. How? Because it becomes our dibur. It becomes our whole life. Because dibur is mensch. And the mensch, this is what the Adam is as a mispalel. And all the while that a person's talking is surrounded around Torah, Memela, that's going to have ashpa on their whole life. And that enables them to be people in whose heart and mind is miyached, the Yechudi Ilah, and the Yechudi Tata, that the Rebbe says, V'chol echad mi Yisrael tzarech she'yanas zayis al yadai. You don't give up on any Jew. You don't overlook any Jew. We don't think that this Jew is not ra'oi. Every year it has to mamish be the miyachid yichudi la the yichudi tatash and nizke be'ezus Hashem Yisbarach. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you. What is? Yukara. Yukara and Vayikra.
V'yata ha'av shali shekol kach ohev oti ha'av shali Melech Chai V'Kayam Al Kol Neshima She'ani